Hi folks, Torpedo Heat here. Today we're going to make you a video on injector nozzles, how to read them. If you have any sort of readings or stampings on the nozzle that make any sense, we'll tell you what it is. Most nozzles actually don't, and you can't tell what it is. I'm going to be able to show you this pretty easily because I'm using brand new nozzles. And so anyway, how to read a nozzle. Okay, this one here says 0.50, 80 degrees A. That means that nozzle is going to put out 0.5 gallons of fuel per hour at an 80 degree spray angle, spray pattern A. Okay, over here you have 2 gallons per hour, 2.0, at a 60 degree spray angle, spray pattern B. Okay, I don't know what this one is as far as spray pattern B. That's probably a semi-solid cone, but I do just happen to know that this one here is half a gallon of fuel per hour, 80 degree spray angle, which is fairly wide, spray pattern A, which is a solid cone for this. This fits a 70,000 BTU radiant heater. So that's how you read the readings on the nozzle. Most nozzles have stampings. You may or may not be able to read what it is. Now I want to take apart a high pressure nozzle for you today because we've never taken one apart for the folks here on YouTube. So we're going to show you what's inside of a high pressure nozzle and a low pressure as well. Okay. As you can see on that nozzle, there's the fuel filter. Okay, see that fuel filter is just like a fuel filter on an old carbureted car. So I'll take this fuel filter off. There's the fuel filter, no big deal. Take that off, and there are some pieces down inside of the nozzle. So set my pick down in there and take that off, and then there's another piece there and another piece there. And then you have a nozzle. That's your nozzle head with a big old hole in the middle of it, and that's empty. Okay, so this little bitty piece here, if you can see, that piece is tapered on the inside, and in the middle of that there's a hole. And they drill these holes with, I think they drill them with lasers, so you won't be able to see that hole in the middle of it. But there's a hole there, and then you have another piece in there that's also tapered. And you can just imagine that fits on top of that one. And then when it sits in the right spot, it'll be like that. Okay, so those are the first two pieces inside of nozzles, and like I said, there are micro holes in them. Drop it in so the taper's up, put this in there so the taper's down. Now this other piece in here, it has a bigger hole in the middle. Okay, you can see that hole in the middle of it. Okay, there's a hole. It's a pretty good size hole. Okay, so that's the last piece, but this piece has a rubber O-ring on it. Okay, I'm going to hang it here for you. See that rubber O-ring on there? On the very end out there? That piece has a rubber O-ring on it. And that's what seals up the high pressure nozzle from leaking fuel through the threads. So you got your two pieces in there. You stick this in there and just set it down just a little bit. And then you're back to where you were when you took it apart. Take your fuel filter, screw that on. Okay, and you're back to your high pressure nozzle. Actually, the holes in the nozzle are so small that you can't even see them. And I believe that they're drilled with lasers. I'm not sure, but they sure have to have a mighty small drill bit. So anyway, here's a couple low pressure nozzles. As you can see, they're both different. This one here has a spacer, spring spacer, washer setup, and this one here has a little O-ring on the back of it, and they both seal up differently. So the O-ring is pretty clear cut. Pull it off, put it back on. This one has a couple pieces to it, so we'll show you those. It's got two washers, a spring spacer, and the rubber gasket. Now this spring spacer doesn't move, okay, when the heater's operating. It doesn't go up and down and compress itself. It doesn't go in and out. It doesn't wiggle. It does nothing. Okay, so it's just a spacer. So to put that back together, put a washer on there, put your spring spacer back on there, put another washer on there, and put your seal on the back. Put that together, and then boom, there you go. It's no big deal. Now, I've showed you guys before the inside of the a low pressure nozzle, okay, but I'm going to show you again, and this is hard to see because these nozzles have some small holes as well. There's the stem. Take the stem out, and then there's a little bitty aspirator in there. Okay, see, there's the head of the nozzle. It does have a hole in there. You see that hole in the middle of it? Okay, that's just the outside hole. That's actually not, and that hole's not all that much important. That little aspirator right there, and I know you probably can't see it, and I'm sorry about that, but that little aspirator has spiral cuts on it, okay, that allow you to swirl the air as the air exits. Now I'm trying to get you where you can see it. See those spiral cuts? Okay, those channels. Okay. Okay, and then that hole there in the middle, right in the middle there, that hole in the middle is where the fuel comes out of. See that hole in the middle? Okay, that's where the fuel comes out of. Okay, so that's the aspirator, and that piece sits on top of the stem that I pulled out. Now, the way these work, just for to reminisce on some people, air and fuel, air passes over the tip of that nozzle where the screw, where that little bitty hole is, and then by that it siphons the fuel out of the tank. Okay, so there is no fuel pump. Put this back together. Put your aspirator on there. Put the head of your nozzle back on there. Okay, and tighten it down. There is no fuel pump on a torpedo heater. It's all the fuel is siphoned out of the tank. Okay, that's on a low pressure unit. High pressure units don't have any air. Okay, so both of those nozzles are the same inside. They both have aspirators, and they both have the stem. Now this one, I showed you where the nozzle and the fuel comes up right through the middle. Okay, fuel comes in through the back. That little bitty hole right there. Fuel comes in that hole. Okay. If you can see, there's channels on the side of this, on the sides of this stem, on this nozzle. See these channels here? Okay, see those channels? Air passes across those channels, and air, if you see, I can stick my pick up in there. You see that? And that's where the air travels to pass across the tip of that aspirator. Okay, so you see these grooves, and all these grooves, see, the air goes right past in there. And if you remember, these grooves are cut past the threads. Okay, so the air travels all the way across it, and I should have shown you just before, but the air travels all the way across it, Okay, see how the grooves are cut past the threads? So when you screw it in, it gets tight, but it still has a gap there. There's 4 gaps, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 gaps there to let that air travel there, and the air travels across those gaps, up here, across the face of this, and then it draws the fuel from the little bitty hole in the middle. So that's how those work. It's pretty simple, but a lot of people have a tendency to think that there's a fuel pump in a torpedo heater, and there's not. Okay, it's all of it siphoned out with air pressure. That is air pressure. So a lot of times you can take your nozzles apart and clean them, clean that aspirator, clean all the air passages and everything. If you do that, you want to replace everything there. There's your rubber seal. Okay, here's a Nozzle Rebuild Kit. It's got your 2 washers, it's got your rubber gasket, and it's got a little bitty O-ring. So this one seals up either type of nozzle that you have with one kit, and then you don't have to, it's easy to differentiate because it all comes in one. So that's how the nozzles are. Now you got your nozzle holders. Okay, you got some different ones here. Alright, and just to show you how those work, this one here is one with a big nipple, a small nipple. This one has 2 big nipples. Okay, you can see that. Big nipple, small nipple. This one has 2 big nipples. Alright, now these nozzle adapters, you'll take your nozzle, and that nozzle will sit right about there when you screw it in. If you notice, the back end of that O-ring where it seals up is right about here in the middle, and it sits right here. If you ran this over, it's sitting right in this hole, right where it needs to be to accept the fuel. Okay, now that's for a bigger heater because it has bigger, more air and more fuel, bigger nipples. Here's a smaller one with the big nipple and the small nipple, but it's the same thing. Set that nozzle where it would be when it's tight, when you got it screwed in and tight, about there, and you see that nozzle is sitting right where it needs to be sitting to take that fuel up from that nozzle holder. Okay, so the nozzle holders, always the fuel is to the rear, the air is to the front, fuel to the rear, air to the all the time. People call me and ask me that all the time. Here's another nozzle holder. Some pretty good sized ones for a big heater. It's aluminum. There's where your fitting screw in there for your air fittings. There's none on this. I'll show you some later. So they make all kinds of different nozzle holders for all kinds of different heaters. So you just have to order what the book says you need for your heater. Now, if your nozzle is going bad, it's because kerosene, diesel fuel, home heating oil, jet fuel, all that stuff, those things are corrosive, okay, and they're abrasive, okay, so constantly shooting that over the tip of that nozzle makes it bigger, and then you have to adjust the heater with more pressure so that it'll run right. So you have on these covers, and this is a super common cover right there. I know a lot of people have seen that cover. On that cover, the left side is just a plug. That's just a plug. Screwing that in and out doesn't do anything. The right side is the pump adjustment kit where there's a spring and a ball in there, okay? And this is a DESA product, an older one. This is a Pinnacle product, same type of thing, okay? Pump adjustment kit inside there, inside that plug, you can see that plug has a hole all the way through it. Okay, that plug has a hole in it, okay? And then here, on this particular model, you would have your pressure gauge here, so this would sit like this, and you would have a pressure gauge on there to read your pressure, and you could adjust your pressure. So we got another one here, and I'm going to show you what's inside this plug. This is a round filter cover. It's different than the teardrop. This one here is a teardrop shaped cover. See that? This one is obviously a rectangle shaped cover. Okay, that's a round one. And there's a spring and a ball in the pump adjustment side, and then the left side on all of them is a plug. Okay, so we're going to take this apart for you and show you what's in here, and tell you why it makes a difference on your nozzle. Okay, because like I said, when your nozzle wears, then you have to go up with the pressure. Okay, we got a ball and we got a spring. Let me move this so you can see it. Okay, I took that plug out, and you got a spring, you got a ball and a plug. Remember that this other one doesn't have the spring and the ball in it. And remember, you could see through it. Okay, see that? So that plug with the pump adjustment kit, that plug always has a hole in it. See that hole in there? See that hole there? And on the back side of it, and I know you won't be able to see this, it has a perch. Okay, and that perch is just a little lip that the spring sits in that pushes on the ball. Okay, now the more you screw that screw in, the more pressure that spring puts on that ball, and then that makes more pressure for the heater. Okay, so that's how that works. So when you go to put this together, you get your plug, okay, and we know it's got the hole in it. It's got the hole in it. Got the perch up, right? So we take the spring and set it in there. And then you set the ball on top of it, and then you take your cover and you lower the cover over the spring and the ball. Okay? You don't try to stick the spring and the ball in the hole, because you're going to drop it. Okay, and that's in there, and that's tight. Now, there's your plug that we just put in. Okay, move the camera back here. There's the plug that you just put in right there with the spring and the ball. That plug has a hole in it, and that's just a plug right there, a solid plug. On the back side, see that ball? Okay, that ball's sitting right there inside that hole. You see that ball down inside that hole? This is a poor camera, but anyway, there's that ball down right there in that hole. I know you can see that ball right there, that little shiny spot right there. That's that ball, and that's where that ball sits. And here's the air outlet here, right here. So the more you push on that ball, the more pressure is going to go up and out, because through this plug, the reason it has a hole in it is because you're allowed to leak air out of this plug. But you're not supposed to leak air around your threads. Okay, so these threads are supposed to be pretty much tight, and that hole there is the only place that you're really allowed to leak air on a torpedo heater, and that's be a regulated leak because of it's got that spring and the ball in there. This cover won't take a pressure gauge, because if you put the pressure gauge on it, it would be above your plug and you wouldn't be able to adjust your pressure. So you have to use an external gauge when you repair the heater. Put your plug back in and you're done. Also, that plug should be sticking fairly well out. You see how far out that plug's sticking? Right there. Okay. I can take and screw it in. Excuse me. And now, as you see, it's below the level of the top. If you ever go to buy a used heater at the flea market or at wherever you're going to buy it at, that plug should be no more than level, and that's sticking out a little bit more right there, but it should be no more than level. If it's buried in the hole, and that's for all heaters, there's the rectangle one again, you see that plug is sticking out fairly well. Okay, so that means that your air system is good. When that plug is screwed all the way down in that hole, and I'm quite sure a bunch of you are familiar with that, then that's when you know the heater has a pretty good sized problem, and not to pay much for it, because you're going to have to put a few bucks in it to fix it. So now this nozzle here that we showed you is 0.50 gallons an hour, comes out at 80-degree wide spray angle, spray pattern A, which is a full cone. Okay, they've got hollow cones and all sorts of stuff. Lots of big heaters bounce the flame off the side of the heater, and then it'll bounce off there and go up to the front cone to make the cone red. But anyway, we want to talk about spray patterns. That one there is spray pattern A. That's a solid cone at an 80-degree wide angle. So that's putting out a big wide, pretty wide area. It's got a big face. Now, the burn chamber on these heaters is reference to all this stuff that we're telling you here. Okay, this is a smaller burn chamber. Might not look like it on the camera, but it's a smaller one, and it's got come off a 35,000 BTU heater. Okay, it's not very long, so it's not very long. It's not very big around. We got 14 inches long and 7 inches round. Okay, so that's a small one. That's on the front. So the fire would basically shoot from the back of the burn chamber all the way up to the front. But what I want to show you is, here's your nozzle. There's your nozzle holder right there. Okay, with your fuel in the air lines, fuel and air to the rear, air to the front. There's your spark plug that sits right there to put fire to the nozzle right inside that heater. See, the tip of that spark plug sits right there in front of that nozzle. See that? And then this other bracket is where your photo cell goes. Okay, so that's a smaller one. Now you got probably a straight spray of fuel straight to the front of that heater because it's such a small heater. Now here's a 125T plastic handle DESA burn chamber, 125K. It's bigger round. If you can see it, it's really not important to measure it, but just to let you know, it's 8.5 inches round, and on the back you got your nozzle holder right there, fuel line, air line. Okay, and that sits right there, and your hot surface igniter goes in this hole here. Right here, it goes in this hole and sits right in front of the nozzle there to light the fuel, and then that hole is for your photo cell. Okay, so those are two burn chambers, and the front, you know, is 7 or 8 inches round. The other one was what, 6 inches round or something, I forget. Another heater is the 70K radiant heater that we were talking about, and the burn chamber, the The globe on the front of this is about a foot, 11.5, 12 inches. Okay, so that's about 4 inches bigger round than your other burn chambers. So that means you have to have a wider spray angle. Okay, your spray angle has to be wider, and which 0.80, that's a pretty wide, or 80 degrees, I'm sorry, 80 degrees is pretty wide spray angle. Spray pattern A, which is a full cone, that way it covers the whole face of that burner, and half a gallon per hour. Okay, so that's why you have to have different spray angles, stuff like that. Now, this 60-degree spray angle would be probably for a 600,000 BTU heater, because if it's 2 gallons per hour, that's a lot of fuel. Spray pattern B, so spray pattern B is probably for a 600,000 BTU heater, a hollow cone that bounces off the side of the heater on the inside and then goes forward to hit the globe on the front to make the heater run nicely. So, okay, just a couple radiation shields to show you. This one here is a real rare part. It's old. This is an old Dessa. Had a copper fittings and copper lines for the pickup tube for the fuel. There's your air. Your nozzle holder, as you can see, everything is all in one piece. Okay, there's where your nozzle sits in it right there. Okay, and then this hole is where you screw your spark plug in. So your spark plug would come out of this hole and be sticking right in front of that nozzle like that. That little bitty hole there, that hole there is for the photocell. You can see the photocell bracket screws to that. So they don't want the light from the fire coming into the heater as little as possible. So they make a little bitty hole for the photocell and they shoot that light right into the photocell. And they don't want the rest of the light coming into the heater like that, because it can mess up with your photocell. So anyway, here's another radiation shield, and this one's kind of like universal because these arms can move. You see that move? This one is stuck. But these arms will move, and you can mount it in any kind of pattern that you need. You know, you can put it crossways or sideways or however you need it to be. There's the spark plug right there. If you can see those two prongs on the spark plug, see that spark plug right there? And it sits right there in front of the nozzle. Okay, and on the outside you got your nozzle holder, which is a metal one like the one I showed you before, and it's obviously not as big, okay, but it has the same type of fittings in there that you need for this type of setup. So these are that's a universal radiation shield, and it keeps the light from radiating out into the heater. So anyway, folks, we hope you like and follow me for this video, because I got some more videos coming up. If you need a video made, I'll be more than happy to make a video on whatever you want in regards to torpedo heaters, and we certainly appreciate you watching this video because it helps me and it makes me feel good too. So if you have any questions about nozzles or parts or nozzle holders, contact torpedoheatparts.com and get their phone number there off the website, and they'll take care of you whatever you need. Torpedoheatparts.com has all this stuff new. We even actually, as you see, have some of the older, rarer parts. So we're going to have what you need. If not, we can find something to modify your heater, and we'll get it up and going some kind of way. That's what we do. So anyway, thanks folks for watching, and as usual, you folks have a good day.